ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial business owner, the founder of Shalo Glow LLC, an all-natural skincare company that helps you glow from head to toe. I am a champion for your daily self-care, business care, and intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all. I'm Christine Gautreaux, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, published author, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Together, we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the 8 dimensions of wellness.
And we like to get together every week for intentional conversations between us and special guests about how to be wise in business, relationships, and wellness.
And we like to bring on, incredible expert guests that help us with this, that give us resources, that challenge us, that,
help us do it in the moment.
Right?
Right. Like when I talk about self-regulating my emotions, I think about when I was a kitchen manager last year at Papado. And there was this one time we're selling food, it's hot, all this stuff is going on. You have cooks that are upset for whatever reason, servers that are upset for whatever reason. And you're this person in the middle managing the front and the back of house. So I'd step to the side of the cook line and just took a deep breath, and one of my team members was like, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I just needed a deep breath." She was like, "Okay, you need to step off the line?" No, just needed the one deep breath, So I'm really excited to talk to our guest today and, get some more action steps on how we can do that throughout our day.
Well, what I'm always thinking about when I think about self-regulating your emotions is my 3-year-old nibblings, right?
What do you think?
Because they're at that stage that they really don't. Like they're learning how to self-regulate their emotions. They are, they are not. Like they're just losing it. Before we go any further,
yes,
I need to give a huge shout out today. Because today is Sammy Gautreaux's 21st birthday.
Happy birthday, Sammy.
Happy birthday, Sammy. For those of y'all that are regular listeners, or if you're new to us, Sammy is my youngest daughter. And today is her 21st birthday. So whoop, whoop.
Happy birthday,
Sammy. How exciting is that, right?
Yes.
So today we're talking about emotional and mental wellness. You ready to jump into this?
I am.
All right.
I am. You ready for the definition for us?
I would love to do that. So emotional and mental wellness is about being aware and intentional of our feelings in all situations. It includes having the capacity and tools to handle and express these emotions in a healthy manner, and the ability to learn and grow from experience. Emotional well-being encourages autonomy, useful decision-making skills, and striving toward good mental health.
So good. And again, I know we talk about what sticks out to you every week, and you feel like you might get tired of that conversation, but really we're in a new situation, some of the same situations, different parts. And for me, it's the autonomy, again, even with the example I just gave, I go back through the examples I give on the podcast after we get off, right? And it's like, well, why did you talk about Papado in this situation where you have more recent ways of regulating your emotions, definitely in this past quarter, right? But I just remember that breath work and that deep breath and intentionally communicating it. But how do we, for ourselves, say, where do I want to be emotionally? Where am I at? How am I mentally? And what do I need to do with it? That's huge, especially this year.
Well, Joe and I we went to breakfast this morning because, Wednesday's always our long day. And so this morning I was like, hey, do you want to go catch a bite to eat? And I can't even remember exactly what we were talking about, but he was like, I thought we'd have all this figured out by this age. And so what pops out to me at this definition is our ability to learn and grow from experience. Because what I said is, if we've got it all figured out, what are we still doing here? That we do continue to learn and grow at every stage and age in our life. And, we don't do things until it's time sometimes, right?
Yes.
I've never been the parent of a 21. Well, that's not true. My first daughter, but now I have
children over 21,
grown,
right? Exactly.
I mean? Like I'm at today is the first day I've been here at this stage in my life. And so I think about that when I think about emotional and mental wellness, that we learn and grow from experience. So.
Yeah. And I think we've been doing a great job at working at that through working through that together as business partners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, of course, we're hitting this frustration or this challenge or this opportunity to learn something new because we've never done this before.
Right.
So checking in and realizing how it feels emotionally, of course, and those mental expectations, but also being excited to get to a new challenge, like a new video game is how I've been thinking about it, trying to remove like the seriousness of it. But this is just a new level. What do we do here?
Right? I can't wait to hear what our guest has to say, because I know she is bringing some really cool in the moment resources. So you ready to introduce her and get her up on the stage?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Lori Ives-Godwin. Life unfolds in ways we least expect, and therein lies the fun, the challenge, and the journey. After 20 plus years as a corporate project manager, director, and executive, life unfolded into entrepreneurship when Lori started a company devoted to the support of local holistic, alternative, and integrative businesses. Lori created Ease Your Energy as a nonprofit whose mission and vision is to share practices that enhance our lives and our health. Through this company, she teaches 2 flagship workshops that teach how to harness the incredible power of the heart and the brain to create positive and sustainable transformation and change in your life. So we're going to bring Lori up and jump into some heart math. Okay. Hi, Lori.
Hey.
Welcome to Women Connected in Wisdom.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, yes. I'm excited to play with some heart math.
Are you now? Are you ready right now?
I think I am. I think
you are.
We're going to see.
All right, let's do it then. So here's what's going to happen. We're just going to get comfortable. And everyone listening to my voice right now, I just invite you to do whatever it is that you call comfortable. Okay. I'm not asking you to do this while driving. However, you can be standing up. You could be in the supermarket. I don't really care, because this works all the time, no matter where you're at. So if everyone could just focus their attention in the area of their heart, placing all of your attention in the chest area where your heart lives. And I invite everyone to breathe slower and deeper than usual. A suggestion would be to inhale for 4 or 5, exhale for 4 or 5, or whatever rhythm is comfortable for you. And as you breathe, keep your attention focused on the area of your heart. Keep your breath even on the inhale and the exhale. And let's just do that together for a few minutes. Ladies and audience, welcome to Heart Math.
Were we supposed to have our eyes closed? I noticed I immediately closed my eyes.
Me too.
I did notice you immediately closed your eyes. And for those that are listening on the podcast, I'll verify that you did. So let me say quite a few things. First of all, Shannon, thank you for the really good cue in, because your deep breath while you were in the kitchen probably came up, but we didn't rehearse that. So when we were very young, when we did something, our parents told us to take a deep breath. When we had an issue, we were put in timeout, basically to take ourselves out of a situation, and we were told to breathe. And so inherently, you had some inner wisdom, not even from your guest necessarily, because you actually understand how your body works on some inherent level. And to answer your question, Christine, it doesn't matter. It's about you being comfortable. So let me explain that Heart Math is not about meditation, and it's not about your breath. It's about being calm and coherent. For 25 to 30 years now, Heart Math has been doing research, and it's being used by the military. It's used by veterans. It's used by our Red Cross system. It's used by hospital systems. And when my nurse is running down to someone who's coding, I actually do not want her eyes closed. I would like her running down that hall with her eyes open. But when she gets there, I want her to be calm and coherent. And when I'm having a first responder approach a scene, he or she, I would like them to be calm and coherent. And so our goal in Heart Math isn't meditative. It's not about being Zen. And it's not about any of those types of things that we normally associate with meditation. What we're shooting for is calm and coherence, which is going to lead to some amazing resilience that you will have during the day. And I'll kind of hope to get to some of that. We have a lot to cram in a really short amount of time. Okay. So here we go. All right. So what we just did was we just balanced our nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system has two components. It has a parasympathetic and a sympathetic. And we spend all day long, typically as a society and as a culture, exercising and strengthening our sympathetic. That's our fight or flight. That's our survival. That's our stress. We have to rise to the occasion. We got to get stuff done. I'm about to do a presentation. I'm about to go on a run. I'm about to deal with an argument. All of those types of things are things that we usually handle with our sympathetic nervous system. And so we spend all of our time strengthening it. And we spend very little time actually strengthening our parasympathetic system, which is our rest, renew, digest, relax. And when you inhale at the same cadence that you exhale, I don't like the word biohacking. I will use it for the people that understand it. Let's call it bio-understanding. If you have a bio-understanding, what you're going to start to notice is that when you breathe, inhale and exhale at the same cadence, focusing your attention on the area of your heart, what you're doing is you're short-circuiting your ability to focus on the problem, because you can't if you're focusing on your heart. You're focusing on your heart, not the problem or the stressor or the situation.
Right.
And while you do that, you're balancing your nervous system. You're doing something physiologically. So this is not something that is like, let's just do this because it sounds good. There is a physiological thing that is happening in your body because it's turning off the sympathetic response, which is producing 1,600 chemicals that you don't want in your body. Cortisol, adrenal glands, a whole bunch of things we can't get into. And what it's doing is it's activating other systems in your body that are more restorative. And so from that place, just doing that exercise that we started with, and I am not doing that thing where I'm shoveling, you know what.
Right.
Okay. What's really happening is you are ending a physiological process, which will enable you to have full access to your entire thinking neocortex and cortical brain. Because we have parts of our body within our thalamus and all sorts of other things that are kind of like eavesdropping on our heart going, what are you doing? Oh, you're beating fast. Maybe I shouldn't be thinking too much right now. Maybe I should be running or fighting or flighting, right? And so we, by doing that breath, we lower the cortical inhibition and it gives you full access to your brain. So sorry for that really long explanation, but I really think it's important to understand that Heart Math is based on science. And it's been explored and researched for 25 years. And there are a ton of studies.
Yeah. And thanks for that long explanation, Lori, because people don't realize, because we talk about breathing all the time on this show, as you know, as a listener. And that explanation of this is not just woo-woo. This is not just a throwaway thing. This is based on science and it makes a difference. Like I know it to be true in my own life. And so, yeah, I love that.
So can I go a little more nerdy on you? Would that be okay with both of you?
We're here for the nerds.
Okay, here we go. So when your heart beats and you see it on an EKG, right? You see the little spike, right? That goes up, right? What's it measuring? Do you know what it's actually? This is like one of those things we live a life sometimes and we don't know what the thing is doing that we've seen forever. What's it actually measuring?
Is it measuring? So if it's like boom, boom, right? I'm thinking it's measuring the flow of blood through the arteries. That's my vote.
It could, but when you see it on that graph with the spike, with the red, it's measuring voltage. The voltage.
That's
so
true.
What is voltage? Right. Voltage is what? Voltage is electricity.
It's our energy.
So your heart is producing an electrical signal.
That makes
sense.
If
any of you would remember physics, and I didn't until I took the Heart Math class, but I am a geek. What it's doing when you create electricity is an electromagnetic field gets created. That's what happens when electricity gets created. That's physics on our planet.
Yes.
Okay. So think this one through with me. If your heart is creating an electromagnetic field that lives outside of your body, and by the way, it could be measured up to 3 feet with current technology, but it doesn't just drop off. So now picture outside of my body, I have air, but there's frequency being carried. There's an electromagnetic field that's real, that's being created. What would be carried in an electromagnetic field that your heart was creating? Is it creating thoughts in that field? Because that's the domain of your brain, right? So what would be the domain of your heart? What does your heart do? It feels.
Yep. It feels. I was thinking our emotions. Yeah.
That's true.
So guess what? When you walk in a room and you say, I could cut that energy with a knife, you're not reading body language. What you are doing is you have an innate ability, because your electromagnetic field is picking up other electromagnetic fields. And your heart's electromagnetic field is the carrier wave of your emotions. So earlier on, when you guys were doing the introduction and you were talking, you also touched on this. So thank you again for that. When you are with a group of people, you have an interaction in your electromagnetic field that's interacting with their electromagnetic field. So you are going to pick up their emotions, and they are picking up yours, whether they know it or not, because that's just the way our bodies work.
Absolutely. I was recently doing trauma certification, and we were talking about this very thing, like, because I think science and the world and Heart Math, like, it's finally catching up with things, with people who have been healers, who have been teachers, who have been, and they often say it's the soft skills, but it's like, no, this is what makes our world run, is knowing how to do this. And, one of the key things they were teaching in this course that I was taking was it's how you show up and hold the space, which is exactly what you're talking about, Lori. Like, you're leading with that field, you're leading with your presence and your emotions and your, and what you were talking about first responders. And I think about social workers, and I think about therapists, and I think about, people that deal with crisis all the time. And if they can show up embodied, if they can show up with this presence and this heart. Whew.
So picture you're the social worker, you're in the elevator. I think, Shannon, it was you that were saying the story, like, before I went into the meeting, before, I'm on the line, whatever that is.
Yes.
What if you think about this? You were to stop and not just breathe, because breathing isn't the point here. The point is really about nervous system resetting and settling, using breath as the way to get there. And this is not breath work that you go to the yoga class, and that has a different purpose. That's why Heart Math has really tried not to be called a breathwork practice or a meditative practice. It's kind of in a different arena. What we're doing, though, is before I go into a meeting, before you guys pulled me in from the green room, I was doing that exercise. Before I have to go up on stage, I'm doing that exercise, but we'll add in some emotions to it. And that's where I was kind of going on this heart thing about being the carrier wave of your emotion. Because what's happening is, once you place your attention on something, you're not really placing it on the thing you were thinking about a minute ago. And I know we consider ourselves humans as multitaskers, but we're really not. We're just really good at shifting from task to task to task.
Right.
And so at any given point, if you can actually place your attention, it's where your energy is going. And that's all you're really thinking about at that moment. All right.
Yes.
So what Heart Math also has in its, to understand it, you have to understand this next concept, which is we have emotions. Well, let's not categorize them as good or bad. They're not negative or positive. If we didn't have grief, we wouldn't actually move through events in the way that we do. They're all designed on purpose. So let's just assume that whoever gave us those emotions knew what they were doing, right? The question isn't whether you want to have the emotion, it's how long do you want to have it for, which is now talking more about a refractory period. So this other concept that you need to understand Heart Math is this. We have emotions, and they're going to be in one of two categories. They're going to be depleting, or they're going to be renewing. And the reason that they're depleting or renewing is how you physiologically deal with the emotion. So now your heart has an emotion. It's got anger, sadness, grief, glum, solemn, whatever it's got. What happens when you're having those emotions is your heart is not just going beat, beat, beat It's one of the biggest lies that I think we were kind of brought up, that the beat, beat, beat part of our heart has nothing to do with the Valentine's Day card, right? So that we have this emotion that's like, we have an organ that goes beat, beat, right? And then we have Valentine's card that's love, I love you, I feel this. Well, it's all the same heart. And it all works together. So HeartMath has absolute proof that I could show anybody within 3 minutes by putting on a little Interbalance device on their ear, which is a heart rate variability monitor. And when we have a depleting emotion, what we're doing to our body is we're putting it under stress. We are physiologically putting our body in stress. Well, that's kept our species alive. That is actually a productive, good thing. The problem in today's world, it's as maladaptive because we don't know how to turn off the stress response. Now, because humans are so incredible, we can turn on the stress response by thought alone. We're the only species on the planet that can do that. But guess what? That means we also have the ability to turn off the stress response by thought alone. Another way to think about that would be we can turn off the stress response or on the stress response by how we're feeling, because there's a thinking and a feeling loop that's going to happen. So when you're having, and again, I don't know if everybody listens to every one of your podcasts, but I love them, so I have. And so some of your prior people on the health and mental and emotional wellness talk a lot about what happens when you're having that stress response. So what HeartMath would say is, why don't you, in the moment, knowing that it's a depleting emotion, okay, it's a thing that's going to take your battery charge and it's just going to deplete you. That is it. We can't, it just does.
Yes.
And it's provable, right? Right. So to be able to have a technique that's a little different than a lot of some of your prior guests, most of our techniques happen once or twice a day. They happen when we get home to walk the dog, or I can get out in the garden, or I could do yoga or Pilates or meditate or any of art or any of the things I love to do that will stop my stress response. How many of them, ladies, can you do in the moment that you're having the stress response?
That's a good question. Because some of them you can't, right?
Right. I would think the ones that I might think of are the breathing, because we've talked about that. And I hear you on the separation of heart math and breath work, right? So things I would say I could do in the moment: breathing and gratitude, even though I usually like to write my gratitude down, right? So there's that part too. Yeah.
No, gratitude's a beautiful one. And I'm not saying there's none. But what I will say is there's very few. So now I want everyone to visualize this. Here you have a stress response. Somebody cuts you off in traffic. Someone's rude to you in the store. You're on a tech support phone call that didn't go so well. You're having an issue at work. A meeting's going sideways. Think about how long it is from the time that happens until the time that you can remedy the emotional issue there, right? And it's the emotion that's depleting you. That is absolutely, we already agreed. So now you have these really strong emotions like anger, hatred, fear, that might be like turning a spigot on and filling up a bucket real quick. But what about the emotions that are glum, solemn, sad, unhappy, not content? They're going to kind of go below the line of awareness, and they're going to still fill the bucket, just like you can have a drip in a sink. It still fills the sink by the end of the day. Heart Math is going to say, let's stop in the moment that you recognize you're having the situation, that you're having the emotion, because it's really not the situation, it's the emotion. When you're having it, if you were to do the breath that we just did, and I'm going to throw one more thing in there, and we're going to anchor calm and ease into our heart instead. We're going to feel calm. We're going to feel ease. And because our brain is such an incredible thing, it can make the thought more real than what's actually happening in front of you, right? It's going to change then and allow you to reshift your emotion to something else. All right. So why don't we do that for a minute? I'm going to just do the same thing again. And I'm going to ask both of you to anchor calm and anchor ease, the feeling of it, not the thought of it, the actual feeling of it into your heart. And again, I don't care if your eyes are open or closed. It's easier when you start to have your eyes closed, but I would tell you that someone who has PTSD is not going to feel safe with their eyes closed. So the goal is for you to feel safe in the moment, however that works. Okay, so let's place your attention in the area of your heart. I'd like you to breathe in and out, slower and deeper than normal. Our suggestion is to inhale for 4 or 5, exhale for 4 or 5, or whatever rhythm is comfortable for you. Now, on your next inhale, breathe in calm and ease, the feeling of it. You could think about an experience that you've had where you have felt that way before. You can reimagine it. But I want you to anchor that feeling into your heart as you breathe in and out. Just for a moment, sit in that juicy feeling. And now I want you to hold the intent to keep that anchored in your heart for the remainder of the day. And welcome back.
I love that.
So it's so deceptively simple, but
Right?
I'm here to tell you something super important. It didn't have to be complicated. We just would like it to be, because it gives us an excuse for why we're not doing it.
Right? Oh, that's a really good. Lori, when you said that about anchoring ease and calm, I immediately went to water because that's my happy place. And then I was joking with myself in my head about go to your happy place. You remember all the SNL skits about that, but I really, it is what brings me calm and peace, and so I could visualize feeling that. And in interplay, we often talk about the physicality of grace. Like if you can have that, if you can identify that feeling, just like you had us do, then you can have more of it. You can do it again. You can, and what you just taught us was incredible and simple.
Yeah. Yeah. So we talk about habit stacking a bit. And I'm going to bring it up here because my goal for today for both of you and all the people listening is for you to do it. And it's actually not a lot more complicated. We can add lots of little flavors to it, but at its core, it's taking your attention, putting it on your heart, and feeling the feeling. Because once you're feeling the feeling, that's another thing that you're doing with your autonomic nervous system. So I'll explain a little more science in a minute, but think about when you wake up in the morning and you're still lying in bed before you pick up your phone. Could you do that for half a minute? Probably. What about standing in front of the coffee maker instead of going off after you hit the button and going off to do something else? What if you just stand there? I make tea. So when I steep my tea, what if I just stood there and I just, for 2 minutes, I just did that? Now, what's going to happen is if you, with purposeful intent, do the thing called a habit stack. When you ride the elevator to work, when you first get in your car, when you hit the first red light, when I get back before I turn my computer on, when you set intention, you will then have a memory and you will do it. If you just go, this is a cool tool, you won't remember. I do it online at supermarkets or whenever I'm on a checkout line, because you always have a couple minutes, right? Whatever they're doing. And that's why, Christine, your question of eyes open, eyes closed, I do it with my eyes open, right? I don't mind. But guess what I'm also doing? So I'm sitting there doing that. And my calm and ease is now the carrier energy on my heart, my electromagnetic field on my heart spreading around. It is hilarious energy of the room that you're in. You can change the energy of the line that you're on. People that were not talking are starting to talk. People that are like kind of in a grumpy place start going, you know what, who cares? And they're like, they don't have to know why, but my conscious intent will trump anybody's unconscious incoherence. Because my signal is stronger and more powerful because I'm doing it consciously. And so,
with intent. I love that.
With intent. Yep. And it makes deceptively simple means, go ahead. I'm sorry. It just means
it just makes me think, Lori, that, when we talk about like changing the world, starts with our own practices. Yeah. That's what that makes me think about, is your example of the grocery store line.
And how did you say it, Lori? You said conscious intent trumps unconscious. What was it?
So my conscious awareness and intent, my conscious awareness of this world basically always trump unconscious unawareness. I've said it differently, but that's the cleanest way of looking at it.
Yes.
They've done a study in Heart Math. This is one of the thousands, not thousands, but hundreds of studies. The bibliographies for this course are ridiculously long. And that's why I love teaching it. Because
Hey, y'all, this is a great place to take a break, take a deep breath, and hear from our awesome sponsors that make Women Connected in Wisdom podcast possible. Shannon, we are so grateful that Shaylo Glow is the sponsor of the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. And I wanted to take this moment to ask you, when you think about the people who use Shaylo Glow, who are we talking about?
That's a good question. I think about 3 groups, really. One, the group that's removing hair, right? So whether you're using laser hair removal, waxing, shaving, you got to make sure that you're putting back what you're taking out. The second group, I think about those with dry skin and the problems that might cause, right? The scars, itching, burning, whatever the situation is, you definitely need all 3 steps, right? The exfoliation, making sure you're taking the dead skin cells off. The oil, putting in the moisture, and then the shea butter with the aloe, sealing it, helping you heal. Those things help both groups, right? And third, for the third group is those with chronic illness. You know, the story is personally from cancer and different diseases that our population is dealing with on a daily basis throughout families as individuals. So I'm thinking about my mom and my grandmother and those around me with the same generational ties, right? And what positive, healthy habits we can start to make sure that we're maintaining our wellness, especially because the skin is like the cape, the exterior, the shield for your immune system. So with COVID, we have to be intentional about covering ourselves. And those are the groups I think about.
I love it. And you know what else I love about your product? It's all natural, handmade, and it smells great, y'all. So
esthetician tested. Yes, esthetician tested and approved. Yes. What about you? When you think about your company, what groups of people do you think about?
Well, you know, I work with individual coaching clients. I work in community classes and with corporate teams. And with all of them, I use a strength-based, embodied approach to help folks connect with themselves and access joy, reduce burnout, and build resilience. You know, especially during these times, I think we need it. I think we need all the hashtag partnership power we can get.
Yes.
The intersection of my sweet spot is where science meets spirituality, because now all of a sudden I've got this great language to be able to explain what I always understood, but I wanted to know why.
Yes.
And so I'm a big why person. And HeartMath did a study where they put 4 people around a table. 3 of them were trained in Heart Math, that they took a course that takes a couple hours across 2 days. Mm-hmm. And they knew how to become consciously coherent. All right. And it was unconsciously incoherent, by the way, was the thing I had said a minute ago. So their conscious coherence, by learning how to do this, again, they took a longer thing than, listening to a podcast, but it wasn't significantly longer. I mean, it's 8 to 12 hours. You're good.
Yeah.
And they really understood this, and they understood the science why. And they had everybody hooked up to these heart rate variability monitors. 3 people knew what was going on. The 4th person at a table didn't. And they had 10 sets of tables around a room. And so they all pretty much at the beginning said, go. And what happened was the 3 people sitting at the table, by them becoming coherent, because they were focused intent on their coherence by doing a technique just like I showed you.
Right.
The 4th person at the table became coherent. They didn't know how to do it.
When you say coherent, what do you mean in that moment?
Thank you. It's a little bit, this is where I got to kind of
the operational definitions got to be nailed down.
Right. I got to kind of go back now. So here's the deal. Picture a rowboat, a crew boat, like a dragon boat. You've got like 10 people rowing and somebody at the front of the boat going, row, row, row. All right.
Yes.
Picture the different the systems of your body, your nervous system, your hormonal system, your cardiac system, all of these systems. We want them to be coherent. We want them to be rowing together. We will get where we're going faster, easier, with less energy, right? if they're incoherent, those rowers, you can just picture it. They're going to go around in circles. The boat might turn over. It might eventually get where it's going. People are arguing. Who's going to win? Hey, I did it this way. When this is trippy, but it's true. Mm-hmm. When you are in renewing emotions, your systems are coherent.
When you're in renewing emotions,
your systems become coherent because you are in your parasympathetic nervous system, which aligns your body and gets everything in just a happy, coherent, working together so I can rest, digest, and renew.
So when you say that this fourth person at the table, right, we'll do one of the 10 tables, this fourth person became coherent. What does that mean in reference to the other three people? Is it saying, oh, I'm calm and I'm in the place of calm and ease now? Or it's saying that the interaction between the four people, now this person was on the same page as these other three?
Okay. Thank you so much, Shannon, for slowing me down and backing me up. So let me just kind of keep laying on this. So our systems our internal physiological systems can be incoherent or coherent.
Got it.
When we are in stress and survival, they're incoherent. What's happening is we are really wanting to survive. And so our eyes, we have dilation, we have blood flowing to hands and feet. It turns off your digestive juices. It makes your seeing more acute, your hearing more acute, but it's not a time to stop. It's not a time. We actually have very little sexual drive. I mean, there's a whole set of physiological differences that happen. Okay. So that feeling of calm and ease that we were doing a minute ago is a flavor of coherence. That might be a way that you could feel coherent, but it's not the only way. But what I'm talking about coherence is I'm truly talking about your internal physiological functions can be measured. And they're measured through a thing called heart rate variability, which is at its core what Heart Math is based on. What heart rate variability is measuring, and this is the measure of coherence I'm talking about, is this. When your heart beats and then it beats again, the space between the two beats, all right, can be measured.
Yes.
And then it beats again, and I measure it again. And it beats again, and I measure it again. It's a little counterintuitive until you understand it, but a healthy heart does not have the same amount of time between beats.
Right.
Because your heart was designed to deal with the external environment in which you're living and allow you to survive.
Yes.
So if you need to run, it needs to beat faster. And when you go to sleep, it needs to beat slower.
Okay, heart. I never thought about it, but yes, of course, that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Yes.
So when you have a heart that's very healthy, it actually has a dynamic and changing heart rate variability constantly because it means you are well suited for dealing with the environment in which you're currently in.
Yes.
As you get older, you lose heart rate variability, flexibility, and dynamicism by 2 to 5% a year. I don't know at what age that starts.
Dynamicism. I like it. I'm with you.
So now,
yes,
when Heart Math is measuring coherence, what we're determining as coherence is how good your heart is at reacting to the environment in which it's living in. Okay.
Okay.
Now, when I say that those people could then become coherent, what's actually happening is our ability, now back to the title of this podcast.
Yes.
When we can emotionally self-regulate, what is happening is we are learning to become coherent in our body because we are learning to shift to renewing emotions such as content, peaceful, happy, exhilarated, joy. There's high energy ones and low energy ones, but it doesn't matter. These are renewing emotions. And if you are having a renewing emotion physiologically, your body cannot be in stress and survival because your heart is telling your brain, you're cool. Everything's fine.
So I hear what you're saying. So if I could, I'm going to repeat it back, right?
Sure,
because
please.
I've been working on the difference between breath work and then the heart math. So what I hear you saying and the research is that when we say coherent, right, what we're talking about is taking a person out of the fight or flight. So you are not stressed. You're not in survival mode. All engines are go on the same step, and we're rowing and stepping together, right? Yep. So that's when you feel calm. You don't feel the angst in your body like there's danger or like you should be paying attention to something super closely. You're centered and calm, and your heart is at a different rate, right? Yep. When you are incoherent, it's not that you're crazy and just mumbling. That might be I could tell you for myself personally, it is a telltale sign. If I'm talking too fast, if I'm stumbling, some things, and I need to, that's when I would take a breath. I love what you do is point to the heart and then anchor. You're choosing, okay, this is what I'm seeing from the environment. I'm going to take that. I'm going to choose this. I'm going to anchor in the calm and the ease, and I'm going to take my deep breaths. And then when I've stopped myself, when I take my next step, this is how we're going to move forward. And this is what I'm going to do. And I love that. And I could tell you for a fact that it works. Okay, I can tell you for a fact that it works. Again, as a high-level kitchen manager, you're going into whatever. Well, let's switch it. Let's switch to the books, right? So, as a publisher, and you're on the calls with your teams of authors, different people have different stuff going on in their life, you know. So, in order to support that person, I want to be intentional about where I'm coming from, and I hear you on the electromagnetic field, right? That what research can show today is at least 3 feet outside of your body is what you're saying. So when we're intentional about that, now we're self-regulating our emotions and also minimizing the refractory period, which is the period to heal from things when we're intentional about it, right?
Yep. And what you just said, by the way, is incoherence at a large scale. You will not be thinking clearly.
Right.
Because what I said kind of earlier on, what's happening is your amygdala and your thalamus are kind of checking in on your heart and eavesdropping, and they're checking the cadence of your beats. What they're actually checking into, one of the many things they check into, variability. Every Garmin watch has heart rate variability now. Every Apple Watch has heart rate variability now. Every Fitbit has it. 25 years ago when Heart Math started, no one knew what this was at all. But we now know that one of the major signs of a healthy heart is your heart rate variability. And so that's very different than your blood pressure. And it's very different from your heart rate. That cortical inhibition that you have experienced, that you said, you know, this is true. What's happening in your body is that it's checking in. And our survival as a species, it wouldn't be really cool if your neocortex, your frontal lobe, your thinking brain, your cortex that really does the complex thinking.
Yes.
When you're in fight or flight, that is not the brain you want. You want your primitive brain, your limbic brain, your emotional brain, your chemical brain to be in charge, because it's going to be a much better chance of survival. And it's just that maladaptive thing I mentioned earlier. Our issue is that we don't know how to get out of it anymore. And Heart Math, that I know it sounds like, again, it's too deceptively simple sometimes for people to understand that that is all you need to do. When you wake up in the middle of the night, ladies, or gentlemen on the call too.
Yes.
When you wake up in the middle of the night, I want everybody to try this, because what's happening is the reason you don't go back to sleep is because your brain turns on and it starts thinking of all of the worst possible outcomes that could ever happen to you. I've got to forget that I'm packing. I forgot this. I got to call. I got to remember this, all of that. If you do that same breathe in, breathe out, focus your attention. All of these steps are important. You can't miss one. It's not just about breathing. It's not just about paying attention. And it's not just about feeling the emotion. All three. Okay. All three of those will be the short circuiting, and you will go back to sleep. And I have tons of testimonials to prove it, that people have taken my class and I've said this very thing. And then I get this like texting the next day. Oh my God, you're right. I'm like, because I did the same thing.
Yes.
This was my testimonial.
Yeah. And I hear you too, especially because the amygdala is the fear sensor, right? So if if your heart, if the amygdala is checking your heart, like you said, and then it's beating fast because you're thinking about what happens tomorrow when I forget the proposal XYZ, then here we go. And now you're up. That makes a lot of sense. But if you intentionally switch it with calm and ease, or write something down, like, okay, I have it on the list, I can let it go and go back to sleep.
I just want to clarify for our listeners, because this is a great resource.
Yes.
Are you anchoring in calm and ease? What do you anchor in the middle of the night, Lori?
That's a good question.
Depends. So sometimes the calm and ease, there's 3 that are my go-to. Okay. And I'm going to give you my first preference. Actually, it's gratitude and appreciation. I find that gratitude and appreciation is like the biggest energetic of all. It's the easiest for me to get into. It's my sweet spot. It tends to have very little, when you think about care, compassion, love, I might love my dog, but they just ate my shoe. I might love my kids and they still left the stuff on the counter, and my husband, someone didn't do the dishwasher right. When I just get to gratitude and appreciation, it's this kind of pure, easy to relate to. And because I've been careful to say it a couple times, and I'm going to say it again, Christine, it's really important not to think the emotion. And a lot of Americans, myself included, I actually think a lot of my emotions. And I don't feel my emotion. And Heart Math really is looking for you to feel the emotion, because that's really where the physiological switch is, because that's what's happening. So gratitude and appreciation, number one, best one out there. Number two for me would be calm and ease. Again, in the middle of the night, I don't try and get too complicated in the middle of the night. I want to go back to sleep. So I'm not trying to think about anything, right? I just want to just be chill about it. And then the last one kind of depends for me. But my go-to lately has been love. But again, I stay out of the woo-woo place.
And I'm interested in, and I definitely hear you on the difference between gratitude, appreciation, and sometimes, again, with the shoes, you might not be feeling it in that moment. Is there any other hesitation with love, especially when we're talking about picking specific ones at specific times?
Yeah, love has, most of us were raised with conditional love, not unconditional love. And so it has a little bit of a, it's got a lot of, it could have baggage. I'm just going to say it that way. Yeah.
I hear what you're
so
saying.
When you're starting out as a newbie, I would say keep it clean and easy and simple. And then, so like if, kindergarten, if we're in elementary school with gratitude and appreciation, middle school with, some of the others. And I would say it's going to be like high school or college before I get to love, personally.
I have one last question for you, Lori. Because I work with my clients on this, so I know the way I do it, but I have a curiosity for you. When you talk about Americans usually think their emotions, how do you get somebody to feel their emotions if they have not been in touch with that part of their body or themselves, or have been taught not to? Because a lot of people are taught not to feel their emotions. So what's your incremental step? What do you say to somebody that says, I don't know how to do that?
So I'm going to answer your question in two parts. First, I'm going to answer the importance of the emotion. All right. So this is not something that you can fake it part. Heart Math, back 20 years ago when heart rate variability was not being measured, created a device called an interbalance or an M-Wave. And a lot of people have them in drawers because they bought them and they haven't used them. Or they didn't have a course and they thought it would be cool, but they don't really know how to use them. But what heart rate variability, what I found when I use this interbalance, all it measures is heart rate variability. Now, if you use your phone, it's not a biofeedback device. It will tell you what your heart rate variability is off your watches or all of these devices. But the biofeedback aspect is super important. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of folks that are struggling with this is a kind of cool biofeedback device to get. It's off of the the Heart Math website has them. And you can usually find them on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. But what it's doing is it's measuring your heart rate variability, nothing else. It clips on your ear and it's just measuring in between the beats. Now, I have plugged, and Heart Math has plugged hundreds of thousands of people at this point. But just even in my own personal experience and using it myself, what I found was my talk would go like this in my head. I'll do it with my eyes open, but it would kind of go like this. All right, I'm going to experience gratitude. All right, I remember that beautiful sunset on that beach that I was on. And I remember that feeling of how blessed is my life to be living in this moment, seeing this sunset on this vacation. And I would get to the feeling for 30 seconds, maybe. And then the heart rate little balance device would actually go show me this beautiful coherent sine wave, Shannon, back to your point. It's a gorgeous wave.
Yes.
Beautiful chart, right? And it would be like, you're coherent. And then all of a sudden I'd be like, when am I going on my next vacation? And then down. Now I'm thinking, right? Yes, so then I'm going back and I'm like, okay, I made that for 22 seconds this time. That's cool. There we go. So then what the goal is because I did have the feeling for just a brief moment. I know that's the target. And so that's why I like gratitude and appreciation to start. Now I'm in my target. How do I stay there? And so then I just kind of keep training myself. Look, the bottom line is nobody runs a marathon after running for the first day. Why would you be able to do this any better? Just if you've never really felt a lot of emotions before, you're not going to automatically start right away. But there is a difference between thinking the feeling and feeling the feeling. And that's my journey. So your question is asking me. It has taken me a very long time very long, a year. Okay, of really working on this. That's long for me. I have ADD. So it's one of those things that I've been really, really focused on. But the benefit of it, and I haven't gone back in all your archives, but are you late? Like if you've ever had anyone talking about law of creation, like law of attraction, creating things in your life, manifesting, all of that spiritual stuff. So every single teacher on the planet and every single discipline on the planet has something that kind of says it's the feeling that brings it back to you. And so if you think about the fact of what I just said, I've been thinking the thinking, not feeling the feeling. And so one of the crazy cool things that's happened to me personally in the last year is my life has accelerated in a way that I have least expected. And it's been magical. And it's because I'm starting to feel more. And so now all of a sudden, this thought sent the feel, the thought put it out, but the feeling draws it back. Esther and Abraham, you're up on the vortex, feeling good, right? Yes. Well, if you were thinking feeling good, you weren't really feeling good. And so this has been one of the most transformative things I've done in 20 years of spiritual development.
Yes.
So that's powerful testimony. Will you say the name? Because what I really heard you say is this biofeedback device that has been a huge help to you. What is the actual name of that for our listeners? Okay.
And I'm just going to say that HeartMath.com and HeartMath.org is that I teach. HeartMath has the device on their store, but the device is called an inner balance. It comes as a Bluetooth to your phone or a wired to your phone. And because you're going to be sitting down, it doesn't really matter. They also have a thing called an M wave, EM wave at the person. Those two devices are, again, just what they sell as biofeedback. But I think there's a lot of other ways to do. I mean, I'm not on your podcast to sell.
No worries.
But what it will do is it will only give you that beautiful sine curve if you are feeling the feeling, not thinking the feeling.
I love
and that really helped me to understand that even though I was sitting and I was quiet and I was meditative, I wasn't shifting my physiology. And the shift of the physiology now that I've learned how to do over teaching this over a few years, I sleep better, I'm producing less cortisol, and I'm producing more DHEA. I have a lot of understanding of why at the end of the day, I'm not depleted anymore because I'm catching the depleting emotion and shifting to a renewing emotion early on, right when it happens. Yes. So it's not building. I don't have to unravel it even more, catching it at the point.
And that's what I love about it. It reminds me of Eileen Dillon's work. And she's one of our authors in volume 2, talking about what to do with your anger, and anger is energy, and transform it so that you can use it somewhere else. Right. And what I know to be true, Lori, doing things like that is, like you said, with what I love about the refractory period, because a lot of times I think, to your point, Christine, people are nervous about feeling it and have gotten used to not feeling it because nothing might be done after that. They don't know what to do with it, or they showed their anger, they showed their disappointment, or whatever this incoherent feeling was that put them in a fight or flight response, right? And what do you do after that? So instead of doing that and nothing happening, what I know for my circle of friends and different things we talk about is now you separate it, right? So you don't have to feel it and you can keep going. But instead, if you can notice it, so you can learn the lesson from that emotion, like Eileen talks about, and then put yourself in a place of gratitude or appreciation or calm and ease, and then effectively have a communication with somebody and a conversation to take you to the next step. I think for me, that's what's helped me work through so many difficult situations and difficult times. What were you going to say to it?
I think what you said, Lori, that's going to stick with me, because, often we have guests that I wake up thinking about, or I'm like, oh, that's going to stick with me, is your habit stacking with purposeful intent. Mm-hmm. And that the fact that you can build on this, like, it's such a practical tool. And, mm-hmm. And I like, I'm fascinated by all of it, because it really goes side by side with interplay and the stuff I teach. And I'm like, mm-hmm. I think it's just fabulous. And
let me say two more little things real quick, sure. Just so I make sure I get them out there, because I have a couple other habit stacks I want to add in. Okay. My friend just did it in the MRI machine, and it calmed her anxiety. That's a good one.
Oh, that's awesome, because people need help in that. Yeah.
Right. This is a great one for that. And the other thing is that you can go onto the Heart Math websites that I mentioned, and they have a bunch of free tools. They have audio files of this that you can download. They are very open source. They're really wanting to help change the complexity of emotions on the planet. And so there are a tremendous amount of resources on their website. And I know you'll do my website in a little bit. I have all of their links on my website as well. That's all fine. But HeartMath is a little bigger than what we just covered, just like whenever you're interviewing people.
Sure.
There's other tools. There's communication tools that you can do with people at work. There's a better understanding of the energetics of communication, understanding practical intuition, how to listen to your heart better, how to shift into different kinds of emotions, how to radiate those emotions. But the tools that I taught today are open source, and everyone's happy to use them. Somebody walked away from one of my workshops and went home, and their husband was having a panic attack, and they walked him through it. They went on the website, walked him through it verbally, and the husband kind of chilled out. It was without medication. So it works.
Yes, that's powerful. We're going to put all this in our show notes.
Yes.
And we will, and people can find you at easeyourenergy.org. And what do you love to do? Like, how do you love to work with people?
So I'm a nonprofit now on purpose. After being an entrepreneur for decades, I decided this incantation of it after the pandemic was nonprofit. So I work with people both as a nonprofit, and then what I tend to do is I also work kind of in the public, like private sector, but I help that fund my nonprofit. So I was like I taught a bunch of veterans this week. I've also taught cancer survivors this week. And so I kind of have two different modes. I love traveling. I can teach on Zoom. I can teach in person. Just all the information's on the website. I don't have regularly scheduled classes like every Tuesday. I have a workshop. That's just not the way I teach. But I absolutely adore bringing this to groups, to organizations, to companies, to whomever can use it. And so my specialties tend to be, because I'm a nonprofit, I have a lot more flexibility to bring it to some needed audiences. So a lot of times I'll get approached by somebody who's like, I really want to bring this to a group of, I have one coming up that we're working on teaching low income people, like in Newark, homeless people, just whatever the group is. If this is something that could be beneficial, let's talk.
I love that.
So every week we do a wisdom in action based on the dimension of wellness. So this week we're talking about emotional mental wellness, right? What are you doing this week to be intentional about that in your own life?
I am so excited to quiet. I've had a very busy couple of weeks with a lot of people in my life, and I'm going to go into solitude a bit, just me and nature, and some walking meditations and some inside meditations, but quiet. It's going to be about me going inside and using the tools and techniques I have that sometimes I forget I have. And I just want to remind myself that I've got a really cool toolbox, and let me dig some of them out that I haven't used in a while.
I love that. Solitude. What about you, Christine?
Oh, I wrote mine down because, Lori, you said it at one point, but I'm going to #feel more. I'm going to pay attention to staying in that feeling, because I can, I teach people how to get there. But when you said that, Lori, about, and then all of a sudden you're like, when am I having I do that all the time. Like, how long did I actually stay in that moment? So I love that. I love having a tool that measures it. I'm going to check that out also. What about you, Shannon?
Yes. Ooh, action. So, Lori, what I've been working on is not just creating hashtags that sound good, but actual action steps. So let's see. We're talking about heart math. We're talking about, I've been doing my gratitude. What's something else that I could do? I really like it too. I think I'm going to say, find your anchor. Because what I like is that you knew what you went to and you knew why you didn't go there, right? She was messed up. Might not be the time to go to love. I might need to go to gratitude for a pet that I love to see every day, you know? So what are the things that help in different ways? Like Christine said, okay, but what if you wake up, or what if you feel like you can't feel it? What do you do in those different situations? So find your anchor. So I have a spot to continuously go back to as I work on adding it in. Yeah.
Yum, y'all. This has been such a enriching conversation. Yes. Lori, thank you for being our guest. Thank you for bringing Heart Math to our audience. Yes. We will put all the links in our show notes so people can find you and find out more. And we are just grateful, so grateful to be connected with you.
Yes. I love that synchronicity.
Yes. And before you go to Lori, and I know we're at an hour, what I want to say is just a special thank you for the research and the time that you have put in, because especially as a Black woman, you want to not compartmentalize or just separate and not deal with stuff. I deal with stuff in a great way. So I've been talking to therapists like, am I okay? But it's just when you look at it and you process it and you can move on, you're okay, as long as you process it and really sit with things and communicate and do everything you need to do, you know? Yes. So I love the work. I know that it works, and I'm super excited to have you here and share it with our audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We look forward to more, Lori. So grateful. Bye. Oh my gosh. Such a good conversation.
Yes. And we have more parties to go to, don't we?
Right. Ready to over in the community in just a few minutes. We're going to be teaching how to write an awesome bio in 250 words or less. So anything else we want to give a shout out to before we close out this week's show?
Absolutely. And again, we've talked about it. We just hit on it, the community. If you're interested in getting connected in wellness, that is what's available right now. If you go over to the Women Connected in Wisdom community, we want to have more than an hour with you. We never get all of the questions and all of the details that we want from our experts, or all of the time to unpack how we can apply it to our own lives. So join us as we go deeper.
So grateful.
Yep. Yes. Thank you guys so much for being here for episode 113. We'll be back next week live at 5. In the meantime, don't forget,
be well,
be wise, and be whole. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Women Connected in Wisdom podcast. On air live on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern via Facebook and YouTube. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be part of the conversation and get connected at womenconnectedinwisdom.com.